Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Welcome to the 2020 Arts Education Conference, Amplifying Essential Voices. I'm Nicole Upton. I'm Ingenuity's Director of Partnerships and Professional Learning, and I'm here today with...
I'm Rachel Claff. I'm the Manager of Professional Learning for the CPS Department of Arts.
It is so good to be with all of you virtually today, even though we can't see everybody in person. On behalf of the entire team, there's always a lot of hands at play making this day and making the conference work for you. And we just wanted to take a quick moment to recognize all of the many hands that had a part in crafting today's session. So thank you to all of them. And welcome to all of you. We wanted to start our time together this morning by expressing gratitude to each and every one of you. There are over 500 people that have registered for our conference this morning, which is pretty incredible. These are strange and difficult times, and we're all overloaded with questions and virtual meetings and online learning and trying to learn how to balance work and life and home and family in ways that we could not have even imagined just a few weeks ago. So I wanted to thank you, and Rachel and the CPS Department of Arts Education and Ingenuity want to thank you for being here. Thank you for everything you continue to do for CPS students and for showing up today. We know it's difficult to be here and gather virtually, and we see you. So we have a really great morning planned for you today. And so I think we should get going. Rachel, what other words do you have of welcome?
I just want to add my thanks to all of you and again reiterate these are strange and difficult times, but we're so glad to have you here. And I've just watched over the last couple of weeks everybody across the sector doing such amazing work for your students, for schools, for each other, being generous and flexible and patient. So I just want to thank you all for that. And also, you're about to see some extraordinary students doing some work today, and I'm so excited that is going to be shared today with all of you. Jorge is a wonderful presenter, and we have some incredible students, so I'm super excited for that.
Cool. So let's get started. Let's take a poll and find out who exactly is in the room with us today. So let's start and find out, who are you? What is your role in this work? And we know that there are probably many, many more than this. Try to choose the best likeness. We only had 5 options in the choices here. So that would be really great to find out who is in the room today. I'm seeing about 70% of us have voted here. So we're going to keep this open just a few more moments. About 80% of us right now, about 46% of us are CPS teachers. 85% of us have voted here. We're just going to give it one more moment. Great, so let's see where we are. So in the room here today, we've got the majority of us are CPS arts teachers. Welcome, CPS arts teachers. We see you, and we see probably what a challenging week it's been for remote learning. So we're so glad that you're here. We also have a few CPS administrators joining us. Welcome. A great amount of teaching artists and program managers from arts organizations. We are glad to see you. We know this is also a difficult time for our arts organizations, and a few executive directors in the room. So welcome to all of you. So let's find out a little bit more about what disciplines we have represented here today. What is your primary arts discipline? Are you representing the visual arts today, music, theater, dance? You can't choose just one. And again, we see those folks working in media and literary arts as well. We only had 5 choices here, so choose the one that best fits for you. So we'll give this just a few more seconds as we are finding out what our spread is of the disciplines. Okay, let's close this poll and see where we're at. Okay, great. So we've got a lot of visual artists in the room. Hi, welcome to our visual arts folks, quickly followed by music folks, then theater, and then dance. No surprise there. This actually follows kind of what we see in the district and data for arts representation and arts teachers. We are glad to see all of you, and those especially of you working across different disciplines. That's great. We've got one more question to find out who is in the room here today. So where are you? Where are you kind of dialing in from today? North or the northwest side? Are you more centrally located? West side, southwest side represent my hometown area? Or are you calling in from the south side today? So we'll give folks just a few more moments here. Wonderful, wonderful. I see a few more votes coming in. Great, we're about 80%. Okay, let's close that and see where we end up here. Great, so welcome to those of you from the north, northwest side, central, west, southwest side. Yeah, good representation from my crew. And then south side, everybody here is welcome. We're so glad to see all of you today. So we wanted to take a moment to go through the agenda and our plan for the morning. We've got quite an awesome morning plan for everyone. In a moment, we're going to do some reviewing of a few housekeeping and kind of session norms that we're all on the same page as we know how we're working through everything here. Teachers also learn all about how to get their ISB credit, how you will get it and what that process will look like. And then our main event, the whole reason that we're here, our amazing keynote speaker, Professor Jorge Lucero, followed by an awesome panel of students, CPS students. You do not want to miss this. They are really incredible, and some Q&A with that whole crowd. And then we'll wrap up with a final treat that our student panel has put together for us today, and then some closing and announcements. So I know we've all gotten pretty good at conference calls lately. We've been inundated with conference calls, and we are on them all the time now. So let's just review a few guidelines of this particular platform that you may or may not be familiar with. So on the right side of your screen, you should have a control panel. This is where all of your operating functions will be throughout the webinar today. It is where your mic is, which should be muted throughout the duration, as well as your camera, which also should be closed off through the duration of the stream itself. There is a feature towards the bottom of your control panel that looks like a little hand being raised. And you can use this feature if you potentially the speaker might have a question, or say, how many of you are teaching visual art? You can use that function to just kind of raise your hand to show a visual way of showing us who is in the room. Additionally, we will be taking questions throughout the session today via the questions box in the control panel. So staff from Ingenuity and the CPS Department of Arts Education will be monitoring those questions throughout the duration of the presentation today. So please feel free to throw any questions that you may have into that box. There are quite a few of us on the webinar, on the conference today, so we'll do our best to respond as we can. And just another way of looking, that's that control panel and what the question box kind of looks like. It is in a drop-down area. So if you're not seeing it, just look for the little arrow and click on that, and that should open up the question box for you. Rachel?
I'm going to talk a little bit quickly about how CPS teachers will obtain credit for this course. If you are from a district managed school, that's basically any CPS school that is not charter, contract, or options, we will mark you as attended in Learning Hub. About a week after the event, we have to enter attendance manually, so it takes us a little while. But once the attendance is marked, you can go back into ISB and complete your online ISB survey, and then you will receive 1.5 clock hours for today. And if you are a charter, contract, or options school, we have a list of attendees. So what I'll be doing is reaching out to you via email with an ISB evaluation digital form. You can complete it and scan it back to me, or take a photo of it and send it to me, and I will send you an evidence of completion form. This is only for charter contract options teachers who are trying to get ISB clock hours. The rest of you are good to go. If you are not collecting credits, you do not have to do anything. So that will be how you obtain credit for today's session.
Great. Oops. Well, that's bizarre.
You're going backwards.
I'm going backwards. That's not going to help anybody today. Speaking of technical difficulties, so if you have any technical difficulties today, here are some things that you might want to consider. It could be your internet connection, of course, so check that connection and see if you are up and running with that connection. You can also always try to exit the webinar and then re-enter, just using that same confirmation email link that you got in the reminder email. And then if the issues persist, we would recommend just joining via audio. There also is a dial-in number on the calendar invite that you received. You'll be able to dial into the call and enter the PIN, and at least listen if you're having technical difficulties that bar you from actually looking at the screen and the presentation at that time. I'd also say we have the handouts, and these slides will be made available for everyone following the presentation and are actually in the handouts section of the control panel now.
Just really quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Nicole. I just wanted to jump in and say I'm seeing in the question box on our side a lot of people having sound issues. It seems like a low tech but easy way to solve it is to log out and log back in, and that may help you.
Great, thanks, Rachel. So when we do get to the Q&A portion of the event today, again, use that control panel and the questions box to send your questions up to us. It would also be helpful if you direct your question to our presenter or to the individual student that you're interested in hearing from. We will do our best to try to send those up the message flagpole here. But we also realize there are a lot of us on the webinar today on the conference, and so we definitely won't be able to get to everybody's questions, but please do send them to us anyway. There is an opportunity, and our presenter has offered his responses after the keynote happens as well. So do keep the questions coming in, and we will do our best to get to as many as we can, small numbers as that may be. I'd also just want to say here that we know there are a lot of questions you are bringing to today, of course, related to the COVID-19 crisis and the impacts from that crisis. And we kindly ask for you to keep your questions today focused on the content of the presentation. Both the CPS team and the Ingenuity team will address towards the end of the presentation some upcoming announcements related to the COVID-19 crisis and some of the resources that are being put into place. So again, try to use that Q&A really for session presentation related questions. Well, that's all the housekeeping. I mean, that's quite enough housekeeping. I think we're ready to really get to why we are all here today. And that reason is, of course, Professor Jorge Lucero, our keynote presenter, who is just an incredible asset to our day. And we asked Professor Lucero to come and present at this conference actually well before we had any knowledge that it was going to be taken online, and we're just so thrilled that he was able to keep on with us and transfer this keynote presentation into a virtual format for all of you. So Professor Lucero is the Associate Professor of Art Education at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. He's a Chicago artist who currently serves again at U of I. And he's also a former Chicago Public School high school teacher, and his art practice has occurred all over the US and abroad. Jorge is also the editor of the compendium Near and Easy, College as Critical Practice in Pedagogy at U of I Press, and is also the co-author of Teacher as Artist in the forthcoming study collection, Teacher of Artist in Residence at the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, as well as the forthcoming study collection, Repository for Conviviality, Jorge, you'll have to help us with that one out. He earned his undergraduate degree from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and his graduate degrees from Penn State University. You can always find out more about Professor Lucero at jorgelucero.com. There's so much to learn and so much to look at that wonderful website. So without further ado, welcome, Professor Lucero. We are so happy to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's crazy. I think if I was doing this in person and we were all together, I wouldn't be as nervous as I am right now. It's a little intense actually to see the number of attendees going up and just to be sort of talking into the ether. But I'm going to try my best to hopefully translate what I had to present in person to this now virtual method, or through this virtual means now. So I'm going to switch out of, this is me just saying hi, but I'm going to switch out of this to show my screen, which will allow me then to go through my slides here. I really hope actually that at some point we will be able to touch base in person, and I know it was said already that I am more than willing to be reached out to in person. That is very true. I would hope that you would take me up on it if you had any questions, or if you just wanted to continue the conversation. Also, I imagine that there's some friends in the audience, and it's sad that we don't get to see each other in person, but do reach out. I'd love to hear whether or not you were here, and of course to reconnect. So I'm gonna talk through, I got about 25 minutes here, and I set my timer so that I don't go over, but I'm hoping that I can speak to the prompt, the theme for today, which is Amplifying Essential Voices. I'm gonna try to do it not as a professor as much as I'm gonna try to do it as a artist who sort of back-ended himself into being a Chicago public school teacher for 7 years. The story is way more complex and has a ton of details, but since I don't have a ton of time, I'll just say that for me, the blending of those practices has never stopped being not only a problem that I'm sort of constantly dealing with, but the essence of the type of material that I've been working with, both as a scholar now in the academy, and a scholar when I was a high school teacher, and a scholar before that when I was just sort of finding myself as an artist. I know I said I wasn't going to do this as a professor as much, but I can't help but pick apart a little bit of the theme just for the sake of opening up maybe the poetics of it. So I'm just going to walk us through a little bit of defining some of these words, not necessarily through the definitions that we're used to, but through their etymology, through their word roots, so that we can see what we can do with this idea of what it might mean to amplify essential voices. So what can I say about amplifying essential voices? And the I is actually really important here, because I am talking from a personal position, but hopefully this is going to it'll illuminate some of what you are all thinking. What does being an artist and a teacher, both as creative practices? I see both of those things as things that we use to express and to discover things about the world. What does being an artist and a teacher open up for us about this important question? Oh, I'm not getting my slides turned. Oh, there we go. Okay. So amplifying, this word means to make bigger or to make more present. It comes from the Latin amplificare, which means to make space for. And essential comes from the word essence, and this little piece of it at the beginning, which is S, which means the ingredient which gives something its particular character. And for those of you who speak, other languages that are rooted in, or even speak a little bit of languages that are rooted in Latin, you'll recognize some of these things. So es is like the way that we would say it's perhaps, or it is in Spanish, for example. So it is the ingredient which gives something its particular character. Voice, of course, comes from vox or voz, which is etymologically refers to the individual spirit or what is called forth. We see echoes of this, of the roots of this in Spanish word like voz, which is it's not common, at least not for somebody who learned to speak Spanish from Mexican parents, to use voz for to say tú or you. But in a lot of Spanish-speaking countries, vos is used to say you. And of course, we see it in the French, vous, right? So the revised question could essentially be, how do I make space for the essence, the particular spirit core of you? And this is an outward-facing question. And what I mean by that is, if as practitioners, either as artists or as teachers or as partners involved in this enterprise, we come in contact with others. And those others are, yes, frequently students, but other types of stakeholders too, parents, administrators, other artists, and then the larger community. And the question we could be asking ourselves to really dig into what does it mean to amplify essential voices is an outward question of how do I make space for the essence of you or of another. So since my teaching and my creative practice are folded into each other, I'm looking for the answers in both of those practices. I tend to get my permissions for behavior from the things that I'm involved in the most. And one of those is teaching and the other one is art. And predominantly conceptual art, because most of the scholarship that I work through is conceptual art. I know that probably a lot of you already know what that means, but just to sort of give us a working definition, it's a way of making art through the idea. It doesn't mean that the form or the object gets abandoned. It just means that the idea is foregrounded. So for me, looking at the ideas behind the works or within the works or in the foreground of the works is actually can sometimes be more important to me than what the work actually looks like. And you'll see that in some of the things that I make. So I'm getting my permissions from art and I'm getting my permissions from teaching to answer this question. And here are the 4 things that I've come up with. One, and I think you'll see it in the examples of the work that I'm going to show you, is that I propose that we create enabling constraints. Sorry, I don't propose it. I'm saying we should propose enabling constraints. Enabling constraints would be, it's not the antithesis of a direction, but it's a sort of open-ended direction. So it's tight enough that you can get some specific results or some type of specific, like headed in a certain direction, but it's loose enough that individuality can emerge. And this is, it can be a little bit scary, but it's a means by which you can take control out of your hands, or you can render control to other people involved in the process. The second thing is to work iteratively and de-skilled. And this again comes from conceptual art. Well, the work iteratively doesn't. It comes from all the arts actually, and that's to do a lot. I mean, to do a lot of the same thing over and over and over again in different variations, so that you can look at all of the different options and you can see all of the different manifestations. The de-skilled part comes a little bit from conceptual art, but I know it crosses into other art forms too. And it's just to maybe lower the bar of what's expected in terms of craftsmanship, in terms of what's expected in terms of loyalty to a specific tradition. And that's just for the sake of further standing outside of our comfort areas. Because usually if we've learned to do anything in the arts, we've usually learned how to do it well. And so to bring down the skill requirement actually opens up another realm of things to look at, iterations to look at. The third thing is to yield to others. And this is the trickiest one, I think, because sometimes we can't help but get in our own way. And this would be a gesture of making ourselves small in order for others to make themselves, like to be amplified, make room for others. I would say I was trying to figure out exactly what the rationale would be for doing something like that. And the thing that I arrived to was that it's for justice sake. It's for the sake of equity. It's for the sake of allowing more people into the room or more people at the table. And then finally, the last thing is to horizontalize expertise. And that's actually going to be the bulk of the thing that I'm going to be showing you with the work that I'm showing you, which is to try to put everybody on an even plane, both in the construction of whatever it is or the education of the thing that you're picking up on, and also the presentation of it. And that's for the sake of learning. So the best example that I can give you of that is that when I used to show work as a high school teacher, I didn't just pick the best things that the students made or the things that were made by the best students, but I showed everything. And even though that was way more cacophonous, and even though that was way more, it didn't seem like I was making differentiations between quote unquote, high achieving and middle achieving and low achieving. What I was really trying to do was trying to show that there was something wonderful to get from every single thing that a student made or constructed or put out into the world. So I'm going to start by showing this piece because I don't really make a lot of objects, but this is a piece that I made for the National Museum of Mexican Art when they had their 30-year anniversary. And it's a piece where they're just books with blank pages that say papeles gratis at the bottom, which means free documents. And people could just rip a page out and take it with them. And the page sort of doubled up as a statement about how we need a document to prove that something was an artwork or something had some kind of artistic value, but also how we need this sort of arbitrary document to basically be able to say, I belong here, or I'm a part of this, like citizenship papers, for example. And this work sort of encapsulates a lot of the things that I'm interested in. It's participatory, meaning people get to be a part of it in some way or another, but it's also me sort of setting up the parameters for it or the enabling constraints for how the thing should carry out. I make these iterative works. Again, these are de-skilled works. Basically what they are is it's junk mail that we get to the house that I end up just sitting down in about 10 minutes. I make a lot of folds just to see what happens. It's a sort of way of drawing or sketching, but that doesn't, again, like I said, doesn't really involve any other skill than the skill of perhaps being a good editor and taking a look at what you've done. I mean, there's a lot of bad ones. I'm showing you some of my favorites, but there's a lot of bad ones, and you sort of just like make a pile of them, and then you come back and you look at them. And again, it's to be able to sort of level the playing field at the making point, at the where it is that we're constructing something. Another piece that I've made that's like that is this slow Instagram piece, which was actually incited or triggered by the fact that we moved to a new house and we had a slow internet connection, and so the images on my Instagram took about 3 seconds to load, but in that 3 seconds I started noticing that another image was presenting itself, and so I started taking screenshots of them and then reposting them back onto my Facebook account, which caused a lot of frustration because people were always waiting for this page to load. Ultimately, most recently, I ended up having being in this exhibition where I put all the images back onto an iPod Touch, and then it was just sat on this gallery bench and just sort of played on a loop. The same thing, this is sort of like stuck in the middle pieces. So the main thing that I really think through is this idea of school as material. So how is it that what I'm doing at school, all of the institutional things that I'm doing at school, how can those things be made pliable? And I'm just going to run through some of these very quickly, but basically whenever I make a syllabus here, I take the books and I put them into this nice clean pile where there's a ledge at the bottom, and then I take a photograph, and then I always present the photograph on its side so that it looks like a floating bookshelf. Another thing that I've done is whenever I need to put a poster up announcing one of my classes at the university, I go and I take down all the posters on these pegboards or pinboards, and then I put them all back up as these sort of geometric push-pull drawings. I call them drawings, but you know, they could just be called arrangements. What my favorite thing about these is that they just kind of dissolve back into the day-to-day existence of the university. This is a piece that I made when I was invited to give a lecture to a very large group, not unlike this, but they were not art educators, and I was supposed to speak about the current state of art education, and I just thought that perhaps because they were all first-year students, maybe they were not going to be listening that much, and you know, I had gotten used to students sort of pulling out their laptops and their phones and ignoring me. So what I did was I made this worksheet that basically said, that turned the ignoring that I had anticipated into applicable material. So I said, I want you to ignore me. I don't want you to pay attention to me. All I want you to do is doodle on this page while I'm talking. But of course, the most interesting thing about it was that when I collected all of the worksheets, a lot of the things that I was saying in my presentation started emerging up as sort of like pictograms in the drawings. This is a piece that I made at the Museum of Contemporary Art, where my friend Alberto Aguilar invited me to do a performance in this bed piece that he had made. And what I did was I took a bunch of books that I had a difficulty time reading, partially because they were too like really heady and theoretical, but also because I didn't have time to do it. I didn't have time to study. And I basically did 14 hours of just like lecture reading from the books, and whoever laid down in the bed, I would read to them. And then this is a piece that I was privileged to make when I took a field trip with some students in Utah. And when we were going to see the Nancy Holt sun tunnels, I brought a copy of Art Forum to sort of talk through the things that Nancy Holt had done on the way there. And the trip was 4 hours back and forth between Provo and the sun tunnels. And so we were sort of like testing out the materiality of the field trip, but not just the destination, the travel time as well. I'm actually going to skip some of these because I don't want to run out of time. But this is one where I've turned my office into a public space. So students come in, I make double lunches and I share them with them. And I've been able to meet a lot of faculty members and staff just to try to make the institution more porous. This is a piece that I've made with every single one of my introductory methods students in teaching, where I ask them to teach anything for 25 minutes, and I don't give them any parameters as to what they should teach, other than I tell them you have to do it for 25 minutes. And basically what they do is they teach whatever they want. So Carla here is teaching CPR, and then here's a student teaching us how to give a proper shoulder rub. Here's a student teaching us how to the choreography to Michael Jackson's Thriller. Here's obviously students who have taught us how to make slime, proper stretching before you go running in the morning, and then a student who created these cloud viewers for us to be able to identify the different clouds in the sky. And there's hundreds of examples actually of these. Some of these are on my website. But the idea here is that while they're teaching, I'm basically writing down all of the methods that I'm seeing the students do naturally. And these are people who have come into the class thinking they don't know how to do this. They don't know how to teach, but it turns out they do know it because they've had teachers ever since they were very young, you know, everything from television to their parents, and then eventually their actual teachers in school have been demonstrating to them how to, you know, give a small lecture, how to do show and tell, how to, you know, check for learning, how to revise your lesson plan on the fly, how to improvise. And these are all the things that these students are doing when we sort of drop the requirement of like expertise, or at least the seemingness of expertise. And that has led to these two projects, which will be with what I end with. I've been putting on these exhibitions where I try to tease out the expertise of people, right? Just everybody, not just artists or not just professors or scholars or people who know, but, well, I should say people who have licenses to say that they know, but just everybody who knows something. And one of the pieces that we made was this Barack Obama Presidential Library, which was at the Southside Hub of Production when that used to be in Hyde Park. And what it was we invited people to either submit replicas or ready-mades of what they imagined would have been in the Obama Library. This was actually still when the Obama Library was up in the air about where it would actually be placed, the Obama Center. And we had about 210 submissions. We had a bunch of submissions we worked with some classes at at Walter Payton, actually. So shout out to Payton. And they everybody came out in full force. What was the most amazing thing about the project was that we insisted or I insisted, I should say, that every person who contributed something to the museum or to the collection construct their own placard, their own educational placard. And this was sort of to dismantle the idea of the educational placard as the sort of arbitrary, or not arbitrary, this sort of anonymous authority figure, right? We wanted to give the subjectivity, infuse the subjectivity back into who was telling the story. And the big question that arose from this was, who gets to tell this part of history? And I wanted to put it back in the hands of everybody, everyone. And so here's Obama's presidential priorities bracket, which in the finals, if you can't see this, it says the economy and immigration, and the economy won. And then this is a picture of, there's two things in this one. One is on the left, it's a drawing of Obama's secret smoking hand. And on the right hand side is a picture of all three of Barack Obama's birth certificates from all the three places that he was born in. This is, I love this one because this is a replica of one of the Grammys that Barack Obama, one of the 2 Grammys that Barack Obama won for reading his book. And I just love how this particular student made it with this cardboard and these stickers, and pretty much the piece fell apart throughout the exhibition. The other piece that's more recent actually was the Your Stuff Museum, which was something that I did at Compound Yellow, which is an exhibition space in Oak Park. That's a house, but it has these components to it that are a gallery and a shop and a studio. And what we did was we constructed parameters or an enabling constraint for people to be able to show their stuff and teach from their stuff. So at Compound Yellow, usually what they have is they have exhibitions. They have, I mean, it's this total like artist community. They have concerts there. They have a library. They have classes. They have gardening. All the things that you would maybe see in like socially engaged art. But what we did was with the Your Stuff Museum, first of all, we made this awesome sign that was part of the enabling constraint. And then the other part of it is we provided the glass cases so that people could show their collections or their stuff for that matter. So this is one person who was decided to show their toy collection, their toy model collection. The most important part of it, just like the Obama one where we asked people to write their own educational placards, is that we also asked the participants in the Your Stuff Museum to not only curate their own show, to install it, and then to develop one piece of educational programming for it. So, and we gave these 3 worksheets. One it was sort of like tips on how to curate, one tips on how to install, and then one tips on how to develop educational program. And that could be programming, and that could be anything from like an informal lecture to a tour to a screening, you know, just any of the kind of ancillary activities that typically happen around museum exhibitions that would allow for the work or the objects to be put into context. And finally, this was a huge project that I was able to undertake when I was invited to give a lecture at the Kennedy Center earlier last year or late last year. Basically what I was asked to do was to do the typical thing, to do this, right? To come and to give a lecture, and then I was asked to give a workshop. And usually what happens in a setting like that is you're asked to give points of wisdom, as I have been asked to do for this, right? Something that could be applicable. And what I decided to do was, instead of doing that, I decided that I would just collate the wisdom that was already in the room. So what we did was I gave them each 6 prompts, and each one of those prompts was connected to a Dropbox or a window on my website that could be populated and then submitted, so that each of the teachers that was in the room, and they were teachers from DC, Baltimore, or DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And what they were able to do was, out of these 6 prompts, they were able to write from the expertise that they already carry in their bodies. And so what we did was published it. We published it through the Kennedy Center as a book. And basically what the book consists of is the first I think something like 30 pages contains the lecture that I gave, and then the last 115 pages is all the teacher writing, and it's just an amazing book of knowledge. It's an amazing book of the things that people carry, and it really is, you know, what the reflection that I got from a lot of those practitioners was that um, they knew, obviously, just like you all know, you as teachers, artists, and partners know that you bring a lot to the table. But a lot of times that doesn't necessarily get to come to the front. And basically what we did here was we just put brackets around it. It's not even like we were trying to figure out how to make something new. We were just trying to figure out a way to put parentheses around something that already existed. Because the other thing about, you know, this type of blended practice where you're both an advocate for the arts, or I should say not both, but simultaneously an advocate for the arts, an artist, and a teacher, is that if we keep them separated from each other, it becomes very, very difficult to do them in real time because the day only has a certain amount of hours. And so we have to figure out, and we've had to figure out, I've had to figure out ways to blend these practices together so that it's simultaneously the same thing, so that when you're making your art practice, it has a pedagogical bend to it. So when you're teaching, it is your creative practice, so that when you're advocating or doing some of the more administrative things that allow other people to do their work, we can find the pedagogical and the creative components or aspects of that also as well. So that sounds like my timer there. I can't get it to stop. Oh, there it is. Okay. That actually coincides perfectly with the end of the presentation. I just bring up the points again that I started with when trying to think about how to amplify others' voices, and it really is a me, you type of philosophical thought where you have to really think, how am I positioned in relation to you? How are you positioned in relation to me? And that's both pedagogical and artistic. I think we can think about it through these 4 points. And of course, they're not the only ones, but they're the ones that I came up with. One is to propose enabling constraints, so a means by which the work can happen, but can happen on an individual basis. To work iteratively and de-skilled, so to work a lot and to be able to have a sort of editor's mind and heart about it, to be able to stand back and look at the wonder in each individual thing, whether it was a quote unquote failure or quote unquote success. To yield to others, to get, to make yourself really small, to like, tighten up your body a little bit so that other people can exist in all of their grandeur. And then to horizontalize expertise, to try to figure out a way to learn, to say, well, you're a student, I'm a teacher, and even though we may believe in that critical pedagogy thing where we invert the hierarchy and put the students in as the teachers, instead of doing that, we could say, the student can bring some things that I can learn, and they also bring some blind spots that I can teach into. And I also bring some blind spots that the student can teach into, as well as bring some knowledge that I can share with the students. So on that note, I'm going to hop into this next part of it, which is where we're going to actually meet our students and have a conversation with them. I'm so grateful that the way that this was set up was in this way. I didn't know the students before we started doing all of this planning, but I've gotten to know them in some of the different sessions that we've had. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to be in the same room together because of the circumstances, but I feel like a lot of what the students are has come through not just through this virtual means, but through some of the writing that they've sent me and some of the way that they've responded to some of these questions. So I'm going to introduce them. There they are. I'm going to say their names first, then we're going to switch out of this screen here. So it's Violet Barton from Whitney Young, Tariq Brown from Northside College Prep, Go Mustangs, India Mahone Godfrey from Twain Elementary, Ethan Vasquez from Mary Lyon Elementary, and Sky Wang from Peyton Prep. So I'm gonna switch out here. I guess I'll save it. And how do I stop sharing my screen?
There you go. And if students want to turn on their mics and videos now, that'd be awesome. There's Violet, Tariq, India, Sky.
Hey, everyone. You got your
Hi.
mics on?
Hey
Hello.
guys.
Hello.
Well, thanks for having this conversation with me. I'm hoping that we can. I know we've thought about some of these questions already, and maybe even written a little bit as a means to get to some of the thinking. But I hope that even if anything has come up now, you feel free to say it. The first question I want to ask you guys is on this idea of where expertise is located and who gets to be the one who carries that expertise. Would you say, or would you guys speak into what areas of expertise you might have that are, inside and outside of school? Like, are there things that you do, things that you're good at, things that you've come to know about yourself that maybe don't show up on your regular school day?
Yeah, so I guess I would say that these aren't necessarily things that don't show up within my school day, but things that expand outside of it. And I think that some of my areas of expertise would be as a visual communicator, someone who can speak better with, things that are shown rather than things that are said. And then also someone who can use emotions as a center of things to really bring people and ideas together, not apart or separated from logic, but in a way that speaks to um, more people than logic may be able to speak to.
I'll go next. I would say I would pride myself on my communication abilities as well. I've been trained as a communicator from birth. I come from a family of communication professionals and professors and all that. And going off of that, I would say that my ability to foster community is very important to me wherever I am. And I would also say that I'm good at combining my disciplines and meshing my interests into whatever project that I'm working on for school or anything else.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'm a really good communicator. I like to talk to a lot of people, and I'm really good at analyzing situations on my feet. I'm good at leading teams as well. And yeah.
Go ahead, jump right in.
So being someone who is inclusive to all, no matter the setting, is like something that I think is a really strong ability of mine. Whether it's at school or with family or friends or in music, man, there's always an opportunity for growth, both personally and with music. And I think being open to those encounters across different platforms is a strength. And I bring people together with that inclusiveness is something, sorry, I pride myself in as well.
Cool. I'll go next. The first thing that comes to mind is definitely like art. I've been like drawing seriously since like 7th, 8th grade, and I've been doing it ever since. Like art is like a big part of my life, and I really enjoy drawing. And I also consider myself to be like idealistic, and I have strong values and creative, but I guess that's not a very creative way to say that. I'm currently like making a webtoon, so I'm tying my love for stories, drawings, and projects all together. And yeah, that's me.
Is the webtoon just for yourself?
Kind of, yeah. It's like a personal project. It's just comic.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
I need to check out your webtoon.
It's not done yet, but
Oh, okay. Maybe you can tell us where to find it.
okay. It's not out yet, but hopefully it'll be out soon. So yeah.
I do have a question about, so the next question I want to ask you is about how you see some of that knowledge that you have that you identify as your own expertise, how you see it coming into school, right? Because this is, who we have on the line here, who we have watching this is, hundreds of teachers and hundreds of artists who work in the schools and hundreds of partners who work in the schools that you all go to. And even though, we're just a tiny little sampling of all of the students that are in CPS, I think it would benefit everybody listening to maybe hear from you talking about how, and this could be, you could say it does happen or it doesn't happen, how you see the things that the things that you're good at, for example, that Webtoon that you're doing at home, or this ability to bring community together, or the music that you're working on, how you see all of that stuff coming into school, and not just in your classes. I mean, of course, in your classes, but just in your experience. I mean, after all, you live in school most of the day, most of the time of your life. So can any of you guys speak into that, how school and your knowledge, your expertise blend into each other?
So yeah, I can speak on my ability to bring my interest into whatever I'm working on. I take pretty much any opportunity and use any excuse to bring what I'm interested in into school projects. So that means that music and my love of performing often make appearances in my projects and studies. In my humanities classes especially, I've turned historical debate reenactment assignments into like filmed rap battles. I've turned mini performances of Macbeth and Beowulf scenes into musicals. So I would say, I don't know, the element of performance automatically makes anything more exciting to me. So I'd thrive in presentations and projects where I can be myself in that manner and bring that part of myself that I love to the table and hopefully make it more interesting.
Anybody else?
Yeah. I think there's always a space to relate to my experience with music to that of schooling. Like the ability to be creative in my school space allows for the creativity to flow with music. So I'm always thinking of ways of challenging myself, just as I would in a school setting. Like if you're comfortable with your work, then I feel like it's not challenging enough, you know? So bringing that same mindset into music where there's always like a creative space allows me to continue to challenge myself. I feel like that can be something that's really brought into the school.
Yeah.
Yeah, also something that I think is important to the way in which I take my skills and like apply them to school or anywhere, honestly, but specifically school, is tying those skills ultimately to a value. So saying that I am a person who believes that reaching as many people as possible is something that is important to me, and making sure that I'm able to foster that type of, communication. Um, I take my skills in visual expressiveness, and also in kind of like this empathetic way, um, and making sure that every time that I make a slide for a school or something, it's something that is visually appealing to reach as many people in the classroom as possible. But also using empathy as a way to make sure that everybody is able to understand and kind of access my work. And that happens in the classroom, within clubs, and kind of like within any aspect of school.
Okay, since I'm a really good leader, I usually take the lead on things, definitely in like school projects. I'm not saying that I do all the work, but I kind of do. And I like to make everything more interesting. Um, like the teacher will say, just do a quick presentation. I can make a whole play in a matter of days and make the whole class perform it. I am also really good at doing, like, say, debates, I guess. Because I usually like to show. I don't really know how to say it, but like I could most of the time win a debate because I am always practical. Yeah, there you go.
Mm.
I'm really
Like
practical with my work.
show the reasoning behind something.
Yes.
Like show the reason. Yeah.
And I know how to do my research very well to make it seem that I am winning, even if I'm really losing it.
Okay. That's a good skill
I'm
to
us
have.
again. So I mean, I feel like making a webtoon doesn't really like apply to any school situation I'll probably ever be in. And I don't know about everyone else, but I don't feel like putting like a ton of my own time into school projects. So I'll like, I don't know. I feel like things that I personally do typically don't fit into like a school setting. Like I guess like artistically I could make like a super cool like looking like slides, I guess. But like overall I feel like the more specialized like your expertise, not everyone has like varying interests, and I don't like feel like making everyone like just have to appreciate things that I do. So maybe it's just me, but like I feel like certain things probably don't fit into like school as well as other things. Like if you can communicate with people, that's like a really good skill to have. But I feel like webtoons probably don't apply as much. So I mean, I guess kind of not really.
I can already see a bunch of the teachers on the call here, their brains turning, trying to figure out exactly how to bring that into their curriculum. I can see it
I guess you
already.
can try.
Nice.
Like short comics could be cool, but I don't know. I feel like
I think that's what I'm saying, and that's actually maybe even the point that I was trying to make. Thank you. I think you're making it perfectly. That was actually the point that I was trying to make in the presentation, which is like, if I can have it, so like if you're my student and we're having this conversation and you're telling me that this is something that you do, it's not that I want to co-opt it and turn it into the thing that we're doing in school, or certainly not, I don't want to cross the barrier that you're describing where like, some things just don't feel as comfortable in school. But what if you and I got together and said, how can we think through this particular interest, or this, how can you teach this to me? So, because actually, so now I'm revealing something about myself here. I never even heard the phrase webtoon before, right? So like, or that I didn't even know what that was until you just said it. I assumed, right, based on what it was. But like, it would be so interesting for me to be like, how do we get together and figure out, based on your expertise about this thing that I don't know anything about, how do we get together and try to form curriculum, right? And I know that's a scary word, because curriculum, we usually think about it as the thing that the teacher brings to the room. But in truth, curriculum is something that emerges from the experience of us being together in the room, right? So what would happen if we were together and we said, and I know that a lot of you have experienced this, those of you who are musicians and your teachers have come to you and said, what should we play, right? Or those of you who are, have really great communication skills, like a lot of you have identified, and maybe somebody who is in a position of power, like the people who invited you today, can say, hey, why don't you come and tell your side of the story, or talk about your opinion. So I'm just saying, opening up based on this little bit of knowledge that I know now about you, it really just opens up something really wonderful, I think, in terms of being able to develop something for the school, right? But that's good. Thank you for that. I don't know how much more time we have for discussion, but I guess I have one more question if we have time for it. Any indication, administrators?
I think we've got time for one more question.
Okay. So this question was not on our list of things that we thought about. So I am gonna put you a little bit on the spot, but hopefully it won't go terrible. So can you guys talk a little bit about what it has felt like to be asked for your opinion, for your expertise, for you to talk about the things that you know? Can you talk about what it has felt like to be invited to this, to be put on in the spotlight here?
My
sorry, could
computer
you
just
repeat your
buffered for like all of
Yeah,
that.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
the
it
audio
was
was
really
breaking
like,
up.
Oh, the audio is off. Okay. I just basically am asking if you guys could talk about what it feels like to have been invited to this today to share your thoughts.
I think something that like really, even within your presentation and within this entire portion right here, and being able to hear like the variety of voices, and of course I uh, know all of you, and yet like I'm still like learning different aspects of you all. Um, it bec- it almost becomes as if we're actually, it is exactly as if we become stakeholders within our own education, and even more so, you said that we spend most of our lives in school, and so I know a certain feeling for a lot of students is that you spend most of this time like of your adolescent life in a space where you don't have much of a voice, and so it almost feels as if you don't have a voice within your own life. um, and being invited to this honestly is just another reminder that I do ultimately in every minute of every hour of every day. Um, like it seems as if I have a voice in everything that I'm doing.
Dang, you stole my answer. I was gonna make it simple and say, yeah, man, it feels amazing knowing that you have a big voice when sometimes at school you have to follow a specific guideline, meaning that you can't outreach as much as you'd like to. So it's really nice being invited to this, knowing that I have a voice as a Hispanic, knowing that I can say something about arts and schooling.
Yeah, I really like the word that Tariq and I think has come up earlier in this presentation of being a stakeholder. Like I'm assuming that some of my teachers are on this call and watching, or the people that we've worked with in this process will, disseminate this information that we've talked about. And I really appreciate the chance to be able to, contribute some of my thoughts and spread some of our thinking into the teaching processes that affect us.
Yeah, I think it's nice that we all have a voice, because like we do spend most of our lives in school, and it's like we sit there thinking that we just have to follow the schedule and we don't have a single say about it. But being here is telling us that we do have something to say.
I don't know. I was super nervous about this because typically I don't really like public speaking. And then like talking in front of like 400 people that I don't really know is kind of like yikes. I feel like this was like a good opportunity for me, like to like say something and actually have people like interested in what I have to say. So like listening to me and like as a individual who has like my own experiences and like I guess I don't know. It's been like super fun being on this, even though I'm like still shaking and kind of nervous. But yeah. Thanks everyone for listening, I guess, kind of.
Thank you.
So Jorge, it's Nicole here. You can't see us, and Rachel is also here. I just wanted to pop in and remind our audience and our participants to please start popping your questions into the question box. And again, just try to address who your question is for, if it's one of our specific students or if it's for Jorge, and we will start running those up the flagpole. And I think Rachel has a question to get us started.
I do. First, I wanted to point out that most of the students, 3 of the students that are speaking today are members of our CPS, Department of Arts Student Voice Committee. They're the very first committee that has been formed. Melissa Rutkellis, our Manager of Student Programs, is in charge of that committee, and they've been working with us all year on all kinds of things. They've been doing independent projects about amplifying the voices across our student programs, about making them better, and have been sitting in on our strategic planning meetings, our team meetings, helping us out with all kinds of departmental tasks and activities. So they've been amazing. And then India and Ethan are both members of the All City Performing Arts ensembles that we run through the district. So just a quick plug, if next year you have students out there who you think would be great student voice committee members, have them apply. We'd love to have them. So my first question, I think I was really intrigued by what Sky said about, not having room in feeling like her Webtoon maybe didn't have a place in the classroom, or that her personal passions were the thing that she wanted to spend the most time on. I'm interested to know from students and Jorge a little bit about where you think there could be room in the school environment for those passions to happen. What kinds of structures or classroom activities would you like to see happen to make more room for those passions? Or what actions could your teachers or your school take to give you that access?
Okay, I'll just say something. I feel like certain things probably not everyone will appreciate. I don't know. I feel like maybe you can like have a general lesson, but probably the best place would be like clubs and stuff where you can gather with like other people who feel like the same way as you do about like webtoons or whatever you enjoy. I feel like in the classroom there's probably like activities you can do to make it like fun for everyone, but I don't know. I feel like those things, I feel like during class not everyone would probably appreciate that. I don't know. I feel like there probably is some way you can do it. I don't know. I feel like
Mhm.
it's just harder, I
Hey,
guess.
Violet, would you be willing to share that story about your physics class and how you were sort of given that little bit of a research assignment about how to, what you were thinking about physics, but then how it overlapped with your interests?
Sorry,
Yeah.
audio's.
I got
Wait.
most of it.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I totally get what you're saying, Sky. Like, I know that not all of our individual passions have a set place in the classroom, but I think that with communication with your teachers and working with your teachers, it can happen. Like, I'm not a visual artist, but I've made plenty of comic assignments for homework. But what Jorge was referring to was this story that I had told earlier. But my physics class, I got a stronger kickoff to the year than you might expect, because physics is not really related to anything that I do. But on the first day of school, my physics teacher had us research our individual passions and like career ideas, and find a meaningful connection, like not something that would be arbitrary to us, to physics. And I ended up asking my dad, who's a recording engineer, if physics has anything to do with what he does, and he had tons of stuff to say. So I think that I know that many attempts are made every year by well-meaning teachers to connect content in the curriculum to real-world situations, but researching it for myself, because I know what I'm specifically interested in, it helps me create a whole new perception and relevance to many class discussions for the rest of the year. So it's possible. You just have to make it happen for yourself, or work with your teacher to make it happen.
And the teacher has to be willing to go there also, right? Because that's really like stepping. I mean, it's the teacher who just decided. It's an experiment essentially, because how do you know what the result is going to be? I mean, to me, it sounded like what you described, Violet, in that assignment that the teacher gave you is the thing that I was talking about. It was an enabling constraint. It was tight enough as an assignment, but open enough that it allowed you to come in as an individual into that research task.
We've got a great question here for the students. It's about describing a project that you worked on that made you feel valued and gave you a voice. And if you could describe a project that you were involved in that actually made you really feel empowered to share your voice.
I guess I can speak on that. Something that happens kind of often within our arts classes, and I think I can also speak on behalf of, because I'm a visual artist, but I think I can speak on behalf of the music department within my school also, that that this is something that they work on doing, is like taking art outside of the classroom in a major way, and honestly putting our art like all over the school in a way that we almost build upon our school and build upon our visuals and things like that. So we walk in every morning seeing what we created, and every other student who isn't even like an artist gets to see that as well. In the morning, I see the kids playing violins for Christmas time, and it all makes it feel like a community. And as an artist and within, like honestly any school system, I know that arts departments can feel sort of isolated in like this way that, we're not part of like the STEM. But knowing that my art is something that is one I can personally, like it's not an assignment saying what I have to put up there. They're asking me what I want to put up there, and then they let me put it up there, which is kind of crazy. Um, but knowing that we're part of this school in like a big way is really kind of like verifying.
I'm going to jump in and ask the next question. By the way, everyone is asking spectacular questions. There's so many of them, and I'm hoping maybe we can do something about that after the fact, because I'd love to hear literally all the answers to these. The question I'm going to ask came in from an arts teacher who said, how can teachers or teaching artists help kids who are intimidated by the arts feel comfortable with their assigned work? How can you help them find their voice if they're feeling uncomfortable in arts class? So maybe we can hear from the students, and maybe Jorge has some thoughts as well.
Yeah, I know I've talked a lot about this already, but I think it really is about the teacher and student working together to find that connection between what that student is genuinely, organically interested in when they're on their own, and helping them apply that passion to, the art project itself. And yeah, I was going somewhere with that.
I mean, my experience with it has been that, teaching is relational, and so figuring out ways to help the students see themselves maybe as you're seeing them with value is usually does a lot to get them confident about, if not the actual projects that they're doing or the work that they're doing it within the context of the relationship with you as the teacher. So I've been able with hundreds of experiences where I've had students who are not art students or don't come in with any. I mean, not only do they not come in with the skill sets, some of them come in with complete aversion to making art. They're intimidated by it. They see it as a competitive space that they don't want to be a part in. It gives them a lot of anxiety. And again, I go back to this idea of trying to horizontalize the space by allowing everything into the space. So even things that are quote unquote de-skilled, or things that don't show evidence of the kinds of things that we maybe think of as high benchmarks, there's still things worth looking at. So as much as I'm interested in what's coming out of my classrooms being things that we could show and share with other people, I'm more interested in the learning that's happening in the room. And so if that means we're showing everybody's work in the exhibition, we're showing everybody's work, because I want the student perhaps who is feeling intimidated about participating to not feel that way anymore, to feel like they're, and I, in my critique process of whatever it is that they're doing, instead of just pointing out all of the things that they're quote unquote doing wrong, I use the method of trying to find moments of wonder in the work that they've created, so that they can echo those moments and get confident in the things that they're good at, not just constantly pay attention to the deficiencies that they might have.
Thank you, everyone. We've got another another question coming in here for the students. So when you think about a teacher, an arts teacher, or perhaps even an arts partner that you've worked with and that you've had some experience with, and that you kind of left feeling inspired or charged up by, what were some of the qualities of those educators, of those teachers that really were important to you from a student perspective?
They tried to connect to us personally. Like she would ask us a little bit about ourselves before we would start playing, because I was in a band, and she would ask things not too personal but just like personal enough, and we would all try to connect to each other, so it was easier for us to all know each other and bond quickly, so we could all sound better and it actually end up helping in the long run.
My clarinet teacher is an arts teacher that I would connect with a lot. I have had a lot of anxieties about, you know, if I want to do clarinet seriously or music seriously, what I have to sacrifice at this age. And she's been really good at, you know, using her experience and talking me through, like, you don't have to abandon all of your extracurriculars or, you know, practice like 8 hours a day to do well. You can just recognize that this is something that is important to you and use that intrinsic motivation to, you know, feel like you want to improve just to improve, and that'll keep you on the right path. And I appreciated that.
I think something that I've seen within like a few like arts teachers within my lives, and especially even arts partners, especially when it comes to dance, because I'm not I'm not a dancer, but I've had experience with one dance art partner within elementary school, and it's something about seeing them also as a creative, not just as like this teacher who is saying these things and you expect them to have expertise because they're a teacher. Seeing them as someone who can also um, work within the craft that they're trying to teach you how to, work within, and almost seeing that kind of like kindred spiritness within each other is something that I always find inspiring.
I'll just say I think like the art teachers that I've liked the most are typically like the ones who are open to like all types of art forms. So like whatever art you do, they're like okay with it and they'll support you like whatever you do. Like I feel like there are certain art teachers who are like really strict and like say you can only do this. And then obviously there are going to be people who like don't like that. I don't know if it's just like the curriculum, but maybe like making it more open and free and like just being comfortable around students who feel like they can talk to you about whatever they need or want. So I guess, yeah, that's what I'm going to say.
Great. We have time for one more question. And I think we're going to wrap up by sort of acknowledging the current situation that we are all in, and asking students and Jorge how online learning has been going for them, what has been successful, and what might be improved, sort of keeping in mind the idea of bringing your expertise to the table or making room for your thoughts, your ideas, your passions. How's it been going, and what do you think could be improved for your experience?
Mine has been going pretty well. One thing that I've noticed, not that I think that my teachers during the year weren't invested in our well-being, but I do appreciate that in these webinar like e-learning calls, there's a lot more time devoted to how each of us are doing and how we're coping with all of this. And in regards to like our expertises coming through in these calls, I've learned that my teachers don't just teach their subject, like it's what they live every day. Like my French teacher speaks French at home and my physics teacher watches cool physics videos at home. And these new like unorthodox assignments that we've been given, they're really entertaining, and I've learned some new ways to to interest myself and to cope with this whole thing through my teachers' expertises, and my fellow peers' expertises come through in calls as well, as when they're talking about, you know, how they've been problem solving during coronavirus, like from social distancing to boredom. Like, I think we're creating a giant pool of resources for all of us to use when we're learning how to deal with all of this.
Yeah, and to Violet's point about the unorthodox activities, I think something that honestly I wish could continue. And I'm a senior, and so maybe I won't see this happening in CPS, but I wish would really continue into next year would be the amount of flexibility that teachers have. I love that if it's apparent that something isn't working, and it's not for lack of trying, but if it's really apparent that something isn't working, I feel like in a normal school year, within a lot of the disciplines, it's almost this idea of, well, this is what the curriculum is, so let's keep going forward. But I think now there's this spirit of like, oh, this isn't working. How does everyone feel? Like, one, that's a question now, which is really great. But also, like, okay, well, let's figure something out together also, which I think is really important. And it's just like this flexibility that I love.
Yeah, like what Violet was saying, our teachers are actually, I guess, like they were caring about us back then, but like even now they're like actually saying it out loud. Like they're saying, how are you doing? What are you doing today? Have you been social distancing? And a lot of my teachers also have been making jokes to keep our minds off of it, because a lot of kids have anxiety about it. So we're like, they were trying to make us jokes to have us more up about it and not all scared and like, oh no, we're gonna die.
I mean, one thing
Thank
I
you.
can say about it is that, oh, can I, so one thing that I'll just say this real quick is that it has actually brought to the fore the fact that teaching is a material, and we have to, I mean, the students answers is the evidence of this sort of creative task that we've all been given, which is how do you make this particular parameter applicable? How do you make it soft so that it does what you want it to do, so that your objective is still fulfilled? So, I mean, my answer to the question is that I've sort of taken it on the way I take in every artistic challenge, which is it's a new material that I'm having to figure out, and I can use it to both discover things about the world and also to express myself into the world. And I'm doing it with my students, and in this case, I'm fortunate to do it with all of these young people, and that's amazing.
Thank you so much. Apologies if the audio is breaking up a little bit. We're trying to fix it. I think that's all the time we have for questions, but I just want to thank Jorge and the students for their incredibly insightful answers. We're getting a lot of questions on our end, but also thanks to all of you from people who are watching, how insightful you all are, and how incredible you all are at answering these questions. It's really, really incredible to watch. I was sort of chatting behind the scenes with the organizers and saying, this is CPS. Just a moment to say that this is the kind of work and the kind of incredible talent that this district possesses. And I think we all just need to take a moment to remind ourselves how terrific this district is, and how much hope there is out there, and how many talented students we have in our schools. It's really incredible. I want to now, we're going to wrap up with an actual video that these students put together in response to this event. We asked them, actually they asked us if they could still present, because they were going to do a live presentation at the conference, but it was not in the cards. So they raised whether they could make something themselves on a video to share with all of you. And so we turned them loose on a little project to create something. I'm going to turn it over to Violet to explain what they made.
Yeah, So the student panelists and the Art Student Voice Committee for a couple weeks now have been working on this video as an end of conference treat. It was inspired by the idea of exquisite corpse, where every collaborator contributes a small part to make a whole. And the iteration that we were introduced to was a dance project where one person starts with their own choreography and then passes it down, and it changes drastically in style as it goes down the line. So we have framed it in the context of Kahoot, which, if you guys aren't familiar, it's a study tool online where it asks a question and you choose from some answers. So we've compiled our answers to this question that you will now see. So thank you so much, everybody, and enjoy.
Thank you, students. And while Nicole is pulling up the video, I just want to reiterate, we have Violet, India, Tariq, Sky, and Ethan as our panelists, and a big, huge thank you to them.
Close your, oh, you're filming. Yeah. Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll write home every day to send all my loving to you. I'll pretend that I'm kissing the lips I am missing, and hope that my dreams will come true. And then while I'm away, I'll write home every day to send all my loving to you. All my loving I will send to you. All my loving, darling, I'll be true. Okay, that's good. Oh, that's good. I'm falling. In all the good times I find myself longing for change. In all the bad times I fear myself. I'm off the deep end, watch as I dive in. I'll never meet the ground. Crash through the surface where they can't hurt us. Far from the shallow now.
Well, there it was, everybody. That was my take on the Kahoot theme.
And that is our student video. I want to thank the students again. We had a few other students involved in the making of that video that you saw who are not part of the panel, but they are part of the Student Voice Committee. Joanna Soltis from Jones and Daisy Salto from Juarez. Joanna was on flute and Daisy was those beautiful vocals at the end. And I just want to also love on these kids a little more and say that they completely executed this from beginning to end. The concept, the editing, the project plan that they put together. And I had a moment while I was working with them where I said, okay, well, you know, everybody can make their little individual video clips and send them to me. And Tariq interrupted and said, I can put it together. And I said, oh, of course you can. And I'm so glad that I took that moment and let him run with his expertise. Today has been all about sort of where can we introduce student expertise. And I'm so glad that I did not attempt to do any of that because I could not have made anything like what the students made. And I just want to thank them again for making such a beautiful video. We will make that link available afterwards on both of our websites, or at least on the CPS Arts website, so that people can share it widely, and I hope you do.
Yeah, what an incredible treat that we were just given. What an incredible lifting energy that I think all of us needed in this moment with everything that we have going on. So we are wrapping up our presentation now. We know we're just a few minutes behind here. We have just a couple of announcements to leave you with. As we promised at the beginning, we did want to spend just a few moments to talk about some current responses and some current resources that our teams are putting behind the current COVID crisis. So from the Ingenuity side, Ingenuity has launched something that we're calling the Arts Ed Response Collective. We know how many challenges there are. We know how many questions that we have and problems that we're just beginning to understand from the impacts of this crisis. And as such, we are convening different stakeholders to really get a sense on the ground of what your challenges are. And we're inviting everyone here, teachers, arts partners, teaching artists, to participate in one of our community conversations that are taking place over the next several weeks. You can find information and links to register for those conversations here from this link on your screen. But we're really, really hoping to get a wide assortment of input from you to understand how we're going to need to respond as a sector to ensure that all of our amazing students that we just heard from continue to have access to a high quality and robust arts education here in Chicago Public Schools. So please join those conversations. Also, Ingenuity, as many of you know, we have the incredible Artlook map, and we're really pleased that we're able to offer an update to that map, which is going to now include a virtual learning library. So all of the programs and resources that our arts partners are putting together that offer a virtual component to them, Artlook is now going to help to capture those. And so you can update your profile on Artlook map to add those offerings to make sure that when the district is ready for those things, we have some place to point teachers and educators to say, here are some other resources from the partner community. Rachel, I'll toss it to you for some DAE announcements.
Yes, the Ingenuity is jumping in with these community conversations, and please do join those. Those are open to all arts partners, teachers, administrators in the district. And on the CPS side, if you are a CPS arts teacher, we are hosting next week some remote arts learning sessions for teachers by discipline and grade band. Everybody should have received an email from it about it if you are a CPS arts teacher. If you did not, you can click on the link that down at the bottom that says bit.ly remote /arts, and you will see the link to all of these sessions. We're holding them next week and a little bit into the week after that. There will be an hour from 4:30 to 5:30, and they again are by discipline and grade band. So we have elementary music, high school music, elementary visual arts, high school visual arts, and then theater is a combined group, but we can do some thinking around how to break out by elementary and high school. These are all Google Hangouts, so you can jump on at any time. And we hope to see you there. We'll be talking about how remote learning is going, sharing resources, ideas, and strategies, and hopefully doing a little bit of simple self-care for teachers as well. And then finally, just if you have a minute, we would love for you to take our event evaluation. It's a quick survey. It should take about 5 minutes. And if you use this bit.ly link, AMP Voices, you can, it'll take you to a survey in SurveyMonkey to complete. We would absolutely love your feedback. And it includes a question about what kinds of opportunities you might want to see from future virtual learning, if we're still in this situation a couple of weeks or months from now. What kinds of things can we offer to you as the arts sector to help you during this time, professional learning wise or event wise? So please do take that survey and let us know what you'd like to see.
And that, my friends, will do it for our amazing keynote and conference presentation for 2020. Who would have thought this is how it would end up? But here's where we all are together. So again, on behalf of the CPS Department of Arts Education, the conference team behind this work, on behalf of Ingenuity, we really want to send out our gratitude and our thanks for you and all of the work that you're doing right now, every day. Again, we see you, we know how hard this time is, but know that we are here for you and we are all standing together to support each other. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and please, please stay well and stay safe.
Yes, thank you everybody so very much. If you have additional questions, or you can feel free to contact any of us at any time. Nicole has a slide with all of our information on it. This webinar will be recorded and posted on our website so that you can access it. You can also access the slides. If you look under the handouts section of your control panel, the slides are there to download. But if you have questions for Jorge, you can reach out to him. If you have questions from the DAE, for the DAE, please reach out to me or any of our staff. And if you have questions for Ingenuity, and that includes CSF updates or Creative Schools survey questions, I'm seeing some of those come through, please do contact Ingenuity staff about those issues, and they'll be happy to help you. But we are here at any time to answer questions, provide support, etc. And another special shout out to Jorge and to the students for making today such an awesome event.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Jorge. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.